welcome. My name is Corey. I'm the young adults pastor here, and I'm really excited you guys decided to join us tonight. I am so excited about what God is doing in YAM, just the New Year's party, the end of the year. It's just awesome to see so many people finding community and belonging here and learning to trust the way of Jesus with our lives. He has a better story for our lives than what we could create for ourselves. And so we're going to be in a series of conversations this month on how God wants to write a better story in our life about how we can change. That Jesus wants to change our lives from the inside out. And I hope you'll get to experience that together. We'll break up after this time into some groups with people in your stage of life to meet people, to get to know their story, to encourage each other, to pray together. And I'm just so glad you guys are here. It's an awesome night. Why don't you just turn to the person next to you, give them a high five, and say, I'm glad you're here, all right? I believe in the high five. It spreads some joy, you know what I'm saying? All right, we need to give more high fives, more fist bumps, more hugs. People need to see some love from us, you know what I'm saying? So, hey, every week is going to be a little bit different here. We will have some large group time. We are going to have a time to worship and praise God. But some weeks you'll get to hear stories of people's lives and what God's done in their life. We'll have some interviews, and sometimes we'll have teaching from the Bible like I'll do tonight. And so every week's going to be a little bit different. Sometimes you'll have more time in large groups. Sometimes we'll have more time in smaller group discussions. But I want to encourage you to make a commitment to be here this year in 2024 because we are not meant to do this thing alone. And one of the ways Jesus changes our lives is in community, when we open up our hearts to Him and to each other. And there are so many young adults in this area, and you might be included, they're looking for friendship and looking for belonging and looking for community. And what we believe here is that we're called to love people right where they are, no matter what their past is, no matter where they come from in their spiritual journey, and then to encourage each other to grow, to trust that there is this relationship that God offers us through Jesus Christ that can change our lives. And so tonight, as we talk about how Jesus does change us from the inside out, I want to ask you a serious question. If you were to get a tattoo of what was most important to you, what would you get? And why? Oh, I do have a clicker, and I put a slide of this. Okay, got to keep myself on track. Does this work? Now, I'm not going to make you talk about it right now, but in your groups, you are going to talk about it. Now, I don't have a tattoo. Spoiler alert, I know pastors are supposed to be cool these days and have tattoos, but I'm not that cool. But when I got married, we got three Hebrew letters put on the inside of our ring. And if I was to get a tattoo, I would get this. And I'm going to have a cliffhanger for you. If you don't speak Hebrew or read Hebrew, I'll explain what that means at the end of the talk. But this is what Jesus says summarizes the whole Bible and is something that's really easy to remember. And I need that because I forget things really easily. And I've been married for 20 years now, and I've lost 5 wedding rings. Like, this is one of those silicone wedding rings. Like, I have to buy like stacks of these because I lose them so much, and it's good for me to have a wedding ring to show people I'm married. And so, you know, this is a symbol of the commitment I made to my wife forever. But on the inside of our original wedding ring, we had these 3 Hebrew letters. And it's good for us to remember what's most important, what we want to build our lives on. So I don't know about you, what you would choose as most important and how you would symbolize that, but that's what we chose. And I'll explain to you why and what that means in a little bit. But I don't know what's most important to you. And they need to reflect on that because at this time of year, you start hearing all these like New Year's resolutions about how we want to like pursue the things that are most important to us, right? Like you see all these things. It's a good time to reflect on like the changes we want to make in our lives. And it's good because we drift from what's most important to us naturally as human beings. Like we quickly forget and don't remember what's most important to us is our values, and more importantly, what's most important to God. We drift away from the things that bring life and health to our souls, and purpose to our time, and love to our relationships. We quickly forget, and I think that's part of the lure of the New Year's resolutions. We want to make these bold declarations of the changes we're going to make in our lives in the new year and pursue those things, and then life begins to happen. And we run into stuff. I mean, at the new year, there's all these really big proclamations of how we're going to change. Anybody go to the gym in here? Hey, so a lot of you guys, you pursue being healthy physically. That can be a really good thing. Now, have you seen the reel of the gym buddies that never go to the gym, but that end up there at the new year where they don't know how to use any of the equipment and they're just like destroying everything? And it's hilarious. You should look it up sometime online when you have a chance. But people go back to the gym for a little bit of time. My kids, we went to church this past Sunday and like, Dad, the parking lot was really full. And they're like, it's New Year's. Oh, yeah. People are going back to church, and we get recommitted to being a part of small groups and reading our Bible. And these are really good things. But if you know the statistics, New Year's resolutions don't work very well. They don't last very long. Because setting goals for ourselves in our own self-development by our own willpower and effort, it only changes us this deep. It only lasts so long. We need something deeper to change us. And the really good news is that's what God offers us. He offers us a better way to change through a relationship with Jesus. Jesus said this in John 15, and we're going to dig into this passage a bit together tonight. But he said, yes, I am the vine and you are the branches. Those who remain in me and I in them will produce much fruit. For apart from me, you can do nothing. Now, that doesn't mean you can't do anything. Like, we can do a lot of things apart from Jesus. We can do a lot of activity. We can be really busy. We can do a lot of good things in the world. We can sit on our sofas and play a lot of video games. Like, there's a lot of things we can do in our lives. But what Jesus is saying is that we can't do anything that's fruitful in his kingdom without depending on him. We can't produce the fruit, the change of light that our souls desperately want to experience, the love and the joy and the peace and the patience and the goodness and the faithfulness and the gentleness, the impactful way of living that Jesus offers us that produces much fruit apart from him. And the good news is that he wants us to change. He wants our lives to produce much fruit. That's why he came, to invite us into a new way of living where we don't have to be defined by our past mistakes, by our past failures, by our past sins, by our past patterns of behavior, but he makes us new and begins to produce fruit in our lives that comes out of our heart as we trust him and we open up our souls to listen to him. That's why Jesus came, so that our lives would produce much fruit. And it is really good at different seasons in our lives to reflect on how we need to change. New Year's resolutions aren't bad things. They can be really good things to reflect on where we are in our life and evaluate how we want to grow, the goals we want to pursue. But if they're not led by God, and if we don't learn to depend on God to follow him into the changes he wants us to make, they won't last very long, and they won't produce lasting fruit. But the really good news is Jesus wants more for us than that. He wants us to produce fruit with our lives. That's why he came. And so I want to dig into a passage tonight that helps us to see how we can change and pursue this new way of life that Jesus offers us. And this is in John 15. And I want to read this whole passage. It's kind of long, but you can follow with me on the screen. And I love this passage. If I were to preach on like one passage, I'd probably pick this one. Because when you start talking about how our lives change and how we open up our souls to Jesus, it's really easy to try to make a formula or a system out of that we can control and manage. But Jesus uses a very organic, earthy image, and you'll see it here. It's very relational. It's very intimate. And it's very clear. It's not confusing. It's just not always easy. So let's read it together in John 15, and then I'm going to make a few observations about how Jesus changes from the inside out. Sound good? Jesus says this, I am the true grapevine, and my Father is the gardener. He cuts off every branch of mine that doesn't produce fruit. And he prunes the branches that do bear fruit so they will produce even more. You've already been pruned and purified by the message I've given you. Remain in me, and I will remain in you. For a branch cannot produce fruit if it's severed from the vine, and you can't be fruitful unless you remain in me. Yes, I am the vine, and you are the branches. Those who remain in me and I in them will produce much fruit, for apart from me you can do nothing. Anyone who does not remain in me is thrown away like a useless branch and withers. Such branches are gathered into a pile to be burned. But if you remain in me and my words remain in you, you may ask for anything you want, it'll be granted. When you produce much fruit, you are my true disciples, and this brings great glory to my Father. I have loved you even as the Father has loved me. Now remain in my love. When you obey my commandments, you remain in my love, just as I obey my Father's commandments and remain in his love. I have told you these things so that you will be filled with joy. Did you catch that? Yes, your joy will overflow. This is my commandment. Love each other in the same way I have loved you. There is no greater love than to lay down one's life for your friends. You are my friends if you do what I command. I no longer call you slaves because a master doesn't confide in his slaves. Now you are my friends since I've told you everything the Father told me. You didn't choose me, I chose you. I appointed you to go and produce lasting fruit so that the Father will give you whatever you ask for using my name. This is my command. Love each other. Man, there's so much in this passage, but it's just so good. Jesus is the most brilliant teacher of all time, in addition to be the Savior of our souls. And I love the images that he used that help us to come to grips with what it means to be in a relationship with God. It's like a vine and a branch. How does a branch produce fruit? Staying connected to the vine, remaining in him. And there's three main ways he talks about remaining connected. Three main ways that he talks about us being changed from the inside out. And the first one is really simple. It's by remaining in his word. And a part of remaining in his word is coming together in community to hear his word taught. But remaining in his word means letting his word get inside of us and change the way we think and live. Of spending time in his word for ourselves. Rather than just taking someone else's word for it or living off a pastor's relationship with God, Jesus wants you to remain in his word for yourself, to get to know him as he's revealed in the scriptures. And to do that, we actually need to commit ourselves to developing kind of like a structure or a plan for that. It doesn't just happen automatically. You know, one of the ways a vine grows, it's really cool to learn about this, is it needs a trellis. It needs like a structure to grow on, or else the vine grows kind of wild. And if you think of like this trellis in your life, you need a trellis for your soul, because we forget. We forget to remain in his word. We need to actually develop a structure for our life of knowing when we're going to spend time with God. It's not like you can't spend time in God's word whenever you want. You know, if you're in a relationship with someone, you should be able to talk to them all the time. That's a part of prayer. You can come to Jesus anytime, but you need a time that you dedicate to listening to him, to remaining close to him in his word. And so one of the ways we're trying to help each other grow in that as a community, if you're new to this whole Jesus thing, is to give you a little structure, a challenge for each month. And the challenge for this month is to try to spend your first 10 minutes of the day and your last 10 minutes of the day with God in prayer and just meditating on some scripture. Because often, how do we wake up in the day? Well, yeah, we're grumpy. The snooze goes off, right? And then it's like I'm going down, check my coffee. I got 15 notifications. And the temptation is just to start going to the things we have to do and all the distractions of life without focusing on what's most important and opening our soul to how God wants to speak to us and direct our lives. So my encouragement to you is first thing in the morning, don't look at your phone. Spend time in God's word. Let his word remain in you. And listen for just the simple things he wants to say to you. What's he highlighting to you through his word for that day? Jesus said, give us today our daily bread. Sometimes we want to have our whole life figured out, or we want to know everything God says on a certain matter. You know, there's a place for study and research and learning and taking classes that help us understand different topics about the Bible. But most often what our souls need to be healthy and change is just the daily bread that Jesus wants to give us, so we can depend on him that day. And be reminded that he's good and he loves us and he's with us and he wants to lead and direct our lives. So I want to encourage you, develop a trellis for your soul, like a structure, practices that help you connect with Jesus. We all need that. I remember listening to a talk from a guy I really respected. He played football in college, and then he went on to work for Young Life, which is the ministry that I came to know Jesus through. And he spent his whole life ministering to kids that had never heard about Jesus and helping them know the gospel. And he was just a really fun-loving guy. But at the end of his life, he developed getting old, my grandma said, it's not for sissies. And our bodies, they start messing with us. And you might not think about that right now, but when you start, if you work with old people or you've been around your grandparents, like our bodies, our minds deteriorate. And he started not being able to remember very much at all. Like his memory started going out. But he gave a talk to all of the staff around the world. It was thousands of people. Do you know what his talk was? It was all the scripture he had memorized. The one thing that he did not forget was the words of God that he put in his soul. And I want to encourage you to not just hear there's so much coming at us all the time. I've heard it said this way that like we're in an information explosion all around us all the time. But in that information explosion, our souls can be really numb. And we need time in silence, in solitude, in time in scripture, in prayer, to let our souls breathe a little bit, to take in God's word for ourselves. And that's what the word meditate actually means, is to let it sink in over and over, to chew on it, what it means for your life and what God wants to say to it through you. I want to just encourage you to develop a hunger to remain in God's word. That's the first thing. And the second thing, there's the growth challenge for this month. And did you know we have a memory verse for each week too? If you follow us on Instagram, there is good stuff on Instagram. I do like Instagram. But we put a memory verse every Monday that we want to encourage you to memorize as a community. And I know you guys, you have lots of things that you do. Some of you, like Samuel, had a great idea for a big challenge he wanted YAM to do spiritually. You got to figure out what works for you. There isn't one thing that works for everybody. But I want to encourage you to develop a structure to your life, a trellis for your soul that's going to help you stay connected to Jesus. And this is just a simple way we're trying to do this as a community. Second thing is by remaining in his love. Did you catch that? To remain in his love. God doesn't want to just have an intellectual relationship with us. He doesn't want you to just try to figure out what's broken and messed up and wrong with you and ask him to fix it. He wants to love you. He wants to love me. God is passionate about us, and he wants our souls to be filled with his love. And I think sometimes we've gotten this version of Christianity that's all intellectual and informational, but transformation, change happens as we let God's love soak into our soul, as we remain in his love. Trying to let God change us with just focusing on our mind is like putting a fire hose on our mind and our heart is on fire. Because all of us, we have this thing in our soul that needs to know that we're wanted, that we belong, and that if you really knew the messed up stuff I've done, you wouldn't give up on me. And what did Jesus come to do? He came to do exactly that. He came to show you God hasn't given up on you. He's not ashamed of you. He loves you. And the worst things in your life is you bring those to him. You can find a depth to healing and forgiveness in his love that you never imagined. And one of the best ways that we can remain in Jesus' love is by thanking him for what he's done, by praising him. That's a part of why we gather and we worship. And when we worship, it's the one thing we do in our life when we sing out loud is it unites both sides of our brain. It's how God made us. God made us as whole-bodied people, and we're meant to praise him. We're meant to show him love and affection. And, when I was growing up, I grew up in a church where we had the book worship, the hymnals. I don't know if anybody else grew up in a church like that, but the only thing I remember about worship as a kid was my dad singing in the hymnal, and I was like in his line of fire, and it was like dragon breath because he had drank coffee. And so this was my experience with worship. As a kid, I was just waiting for it to be over. And I didn't like church. And then I came to know Jesus. I accepted the gospel for myself. I learned how much Jesus loved me. I didn't know that I had a problem of sin that Jesus came to die for. And when I learned that God loved me that much and he invited me to respond to him, to put my faith in him, I did. And I found this love I didn't have before. And I just wanted to start praising him. And we gathered together. And we had a high school group at the time, and someone would just have a guitar around a circle, and we were praising God. And I found myself wanting to sing. I'd never wanted to sing before. I just wanted to express love for God. And then I got involved with some other groups, and people were raising their hands and stuff. And I was like, this is weird. I've never seen this. Why would someone do that? Or do they have a question? And then I was like, oh, they're worshiping God with all that they are. They're saying, God, I want to show you I love you with all that I am. I surrender. Kind of like a kid saying to their dad, hey, here I am. And now, as I've learned how broken and messed up I am and how much I need Jesus' love, I just want to praise him every chance I can with all that I am. And if you're here and maybe you feel disconnected from Jesus' love and you see other people having an experience with God and you're like, I don't know what that is. It's okay to have questions and to ask those things. That's where we're a safe place, you know. We want to not put pressure on people to respond to God in a certain way. Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. God doesn't force you to love him. He wants to have a love relationship with you from your heart. But there might be some reasons why you're feeling disconnected from Jesus' love, if that's true for you, if you struggle to remain close to his love. And I have a few reasons. These aren't exhaustive at all, but these are a few from the Bible. There's 3 things that can get in the way of Jesus' love in our life. Not being vulnerable with God and others, just kind of coming to church and going through the motions, not really letting God into the place in our heart where we need him, not letting other people into those places. You know, the Bible says when we confess our sins to one another, we will be healed. We'll be forgiven. That anyone who says they have no sin, the Bible says a liar. Actually, admitting that we have a need for God is like the starting point in the Christian life. And we never outgrow our need for God. In Christian community, we're called to fight for each other's hearts, to experience his love. And a part of how we do that is to be honest about what's going on in our souls. And maybe you've just got this wall of fear around your heart between you and Jesus. That if people really knew the real you, that they wouldn't love you. And if God really knew the real you, he wouldn't love you. But I want to tell you that's completely opposite from the truth. In the gospel, we find we belong to Jesus because of what he's done for us. And as we let him in, we can experience his love. So maybe that's a barrier for you. Or maybe putting someone or something else in Jesus' place. You know, our problem as human beings is we love the wrong things and we love the right things in the wrong order. Okay, you might have to think about that for a second. But you guys know what I mean. You've all seen the movies, or maybe you've lived this movie where there's a dad who goes off in pursuit of money and leaves his family in the dust. Or there was a girl that was in middle school or high school, and they went after popularity, and they left their friends in the dust, and they trashed them and gossiped about them. And the person you thought was close to you, then now you're not anymore. There's so many things. We can go after the wrong things: popularity, fame, money, power, success, sex, like these kind of things, thinking they're going to fill our lives, and then they leave us empty, or they leave us distant from other people, not remaining close to Jesus' love. Or we can put a really good thing in the place that only Jesus can. Like, I'm tempted about this with my family all the time. I love my kids. I love my wife, but they can't be Jesus. And money, that's a good thing. God gave us money as a tool to use for his purposes, but when we put money in the place of God, then our souls wither and we get disconnected from his love. When we put the wrong thing in the place of God, or we put the right thing in the wrong order, then we can remain really disconnected from Jesus' love. And then sometimes it's our ideas of love that get in the way. Our culture is so based on feelings rather than what Jesus says love is commitment. Do you know the word he used for love in this passage in John 15? It's agape. And agape is a love that's based on sacrifice and commitment. And that's the love that Jesus shows us. That Jesus went to the cross when it didn't feel good for him. And sometimes we have this picture of being close to Jesus that's going to be based on really good feelings. And sometimes when we're in worship or when we're singing songs to him, it feels really good. We feel really close to him. Other times we don't. Sometimes we spend time in the Bible or in prayer, the things that we know that we're called to do to remain close to him. And we feel like, man, there's something that really spoke to me today. Other times it's just like, oh, that was kind of good. And sometimes we feel dry. Our relationship with God is not based on our feelings. It's based on his commitment to you and your commitment to him. And that comes from your heart. Jesus gave his life to you, and he invites you to give your life to him. And I talk to people about this all the time that feel like maybe I'm missing out on something from God. And And maybe that's true. Maybe you are really disconnected from God because you haven't ever asked him to come into your life. You haven't said, Jesus, I need you, and I want to know what it means to be filled with your Holy Spirit. I want you to come in and save me. Maybe you've never asked him that. And if you haven't, if you've never been that vulnerable with God to ask, you probably are going to feel disconnected from him. But once you've done that, we don't always feel all the feels. And when we do, it's a blessing because God made us with feelings. But actually, our difficult emotions and feelings can be a gateway to a deeper relationship with Jesus. You guys know, since we're doing a talk on Inside Out, I had to bring this picture. You guys know this movie, Inside Out? Anybody ever seen this? It's a great movie. I love it because it gives you a window into the inner world that we often act like isn't there. And it names the 6 big emotions that we all have. And we all have these things like anger and disgust and fear and sadness. And sometimes we think we just need to put on a happy face and act like everything's okay when it's not. But really what we need to do is to allow God into those feelings. And we can turn to God and we can name the feelings that we have. God, I'm feeling sad about this. I'm feeling lonely about this. I'm feeling angry about this. And we can begin to process it with him or name it with a friend that we can talk to about it. It doesn't have the hold on us anymore. And God becomes more present. We become close to him in his love as we deal with what's actually happening in our inner world rather than stuffing it down and acting like it's not there. And that's actually the point of this movie. You know, the Joy character in this movie, she spends most of the movie trying to kill sadness because she thinks it's bad for the little girl in the movie that you're getting the picture into her inner world to have sadness in her life. But as soon as she's honest about her sadness with people in her life, do you know what happens? Joy lights up. She actually experiences joy for the first time because people come around her and show her love. And, you know, neuroscientists have discovered something in our brain that the Bible's been saying for a long time is that joy is actually relational. That when Jesus says that I want your joy to overflow, it's because he wants to be with you. And when you know when someone wants to be with you in your weakness, in your struggle, even in your mistakes, and they don't reject you, that brings joy to your soul. It brings a fruitfulness from the inside, a change that no one can take away from you. So if we want to change from the inside out, we need to remain close to Jesus' love. And then here's the third thing we see in this passage. Jesus changes us from the inside out as we listen to his voice and do what he says. We don't change without obedience. We don't change without actually taking a step of faith on what Jesus is showing us. We don't like the word obedience in our culture, right? It feels like we're being conformed to somebody else's standard. But have you ever thought about the alternative? If you're not obeying Jesus, who are you obeying? You're obeying the world and what they've said is true and right and good, or you're obeying yourself and how you feel on the inside and what you've determined is true, right, or good. And I don't know about you, but I'm not God, and I've messed up enough in my life to know my way is not better than Jesus' way. And maybe you're still in the place you're like, I don't know. Well, God says, go for it. See how that works out for you. But the counterintuitive thing of the Bible is that we actually find freedom through obedience. That we were made to follow the one who created us and to align our life with his will. That's why Jesus said, let your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. He wants his will to be done through our lives. And the journey of maturity, of changing from the inside is listening to Jesus' voice in the details of our lives and learning to follow him. And that takes a lot of practice. We don't always get that right. And that's why we need each other in community so we can say, hey, don't forget. This is most important. Jesus wants you to produce much fruit. You got off track here, but hey, come on back. We need what he says, and he hasn't given up on you. And some of you are here tonight, and you need to hear that. And maybe you started off this year in 2024, and you're like, had these grand ambitions. Maybe you even went to the New Year's party, and you're like, this year's going to be all for Jesus, and then something happened in the last week. Do you think God doesn't know that? I'll tell you for myself, The day after the New Year's party on January 1st, I was up throwing up all night. Last week was a complete awfulness. I was recovering all last week. That was my start to 2024. It's through the challenges of our lives that we learn to persevere and trust and obey Jesus, and he leads us through the difficulties of our lives to become more like him. I'm going to start recommending like one book a month, and I thought I had it with me, but I must have left it in the back. Frank's got it. Can you hold it up? The book I want to recommend this month, it's called A Long Obedience in the Same Direction. And I think this is a book I'd recommend just because, hey, you can see it right there. And we'll put it in the Discord, so join the Discord. But if you like to read, or maybe you don't like to read, it's okay. Try it. It's a great book. It's one of my favorites because it talks about how our culture is based on instant gratification. We want everything now. And God works through a much more patient process of moving us in a long obedience in the same direction towards Jesus, of directing our love and our affection towards him, of learning to listen to his voice, even when we've messed up. And sometimes in my life, I'll just be honest with you, when I've messed up, when I've failed, when I've blown it, that shows me I really need to pay more attention. And that brings me back to what I have on the inside of my wedding ring. You guys remember that? Sorry. Right there. In the Old Testament, that was written in Hebrew. These are 3 Hebrew letters that mean Shema. And in Hebrew, that means listen. And when Jesus was asked what's most important, he quoted the Shema. The Shema is actually short for this longer passage in Deuteronomy chapter 6. You guys know what Jesus said was most important? In Matthew 22, he was asked this question. There's always been different religions and different ways of connecting with God. And so some of the religious leaders of Jesus' time came to him and they said, hey, we heard that you silenced the Pharisees. And they met together to ask him this question. One of them said, who was an expert in the religious law, tried to trap him with this question. Teacher, what's the most important commandment in the law of Moses? And Jesus replied, you must love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is equally important. Love your neighbor as yourself. The entire law and all the demands of the prophets are based on these 2 commandments. So what Jesus said was most important is that we would cultivate in our soul this love relationship with God where we love him with our whole mind, our whole heart, our whole strength, and our whole soul. And it's like this integration of the human person directed back towards our Creator. And what sin came to disintegrate, sin came to make us a slave to our bodies, and that our wills and our desires would follow our impulses and what our bodies want, and that our mind would then justify it. That's what sin does. It leads us away from God. What Jesus came to do was to restore us, to bring a sense of peace and well-being inside of our souls, where now our love and affection is dedicated towards the God who made us. And that's connected to the way we love each other, because the love that we have for each other, as much as we can love each other, it isn't enough. We need the love of God to pour through us to then teach us how to love each other. And those 2 things are connected. And that's the brilliance of Jesus. He said that's what's most important, but that wasn't his original idea. He got that from his Father before the world was even created. Did you know the universe was created out of God's love, and God is relational, so he wanted us to experience it. And so even though he put this tree in the garden and gave us a choice, God never wanted us to leave his love. He just knows you can't love someone without a choice. He didn't make us robots, so he allows us to choose. And we walked away from him, and we've been going our own way, but he never gave up on us. And in the Old Testament, he started this rescue operation. He started showing people what he was really like. And after he saved his people from slavery in Egypt, he gave them the commandments. He said, listen. And this was known as the Shema. This was written on every doorpost in every Jewish person's house in the Old Testament. And that word means listen. And to listen doesn't mean to just hear the words. It means to do what it says. In the Bible, listening and doing are not meant to be disconnected. They're meant to be connected. When we hear God speaking to us to something, that's the time to respond in faith. And so this is what Jesus brings up as the most important thing, that we would listen to how much God loves us, and that we would respond in making that the most important pursuit in our life. Because when we make God's love the foundation for everything that we do, then we have a love to share with others that no one can take away from us, and this world has never seen. And so I want to encourage you this year as we go into 2024, what's most important to you? And what if we made as a community what was most important to Jesus? What if we made pursuing a more loving relationship with God and other people the most important thing in our life? And what if we opened up our souls to listen to how he specifically wants to guide and direct us? Because I believe what God is saying to you tonight in your heart is more important than anything that I've said to you tonight. And his Holy Spirit has this amazing way of speaking to each one of us to open up our souls to hear the truth from his word that he wants us to know. And so I actually want to give you a little time just to listen. So I'm going to invite Greg up just to kind of noodle around on the guitar. I didn't tell you we were going to do that. And I'm just going to give you a few minutes before we go into groups. There's a card under your chair and a pen. And I just have some questions for you to reflect on, just to help you listen to what God is saying to you. Because this year, if you're going to let Jesus change you from the inside out, you need to build a trellis for your soul. And I want to encourage you to do that now, to make this one of the pieces in that structure. That this community is going to be a place that you prioritize and you commit to, and you invite people to come to experience the love of God and worship and community together, of opening up God's word, of making friendships and relationships, of really learning how to love each other in the way of Jesus, that you'd make this a priority. And then that you'd make a priority spending time with Jesus, and you'd develop a pattern for that in your life, a practice of doing that. But tonight, I just want you to spend some time listening. What's Jesus saying to you? And if you pursued what Jesus says is most important, how would that impact your 2024? What's something that might get in the way of loving God in your life? And what's a step you could take?